Hello, welcome to the presentation of components of the blood by Laura Lewis. That's me who's talking now. Okay, so we're going to start. So, learning aims today is an understanding of the components, an understanding of the components that the blood is made up of, an overview of the functions of the red blood cells, the platelets, the white blood cells, and the plasma. And finally, how to answer questions on the functions of the blood. So how to answer questions about the subjects we're speaking about today. Okay, so we'll start looking at the blood. So if you've ever had a blood test, it's not an overall pleasant experience, but you may have seen your blood go into a test tube. I've had a blood test before. Thankfully, came back and it was fine. But what you see sometimes, if the blood's sitting there for a long time, it separates itself into the plasma and the rest of the blood. So we'll talk about in more detail here, but you may have seen this, or you may be able to search on YouTube someone having a blood test, and you can see that they get vials or the test tubes of blood, that the blood will start to separate itself once it's out of your body. So that you can see this happening in real life. So I will just put it here for a minute. It's quite clear to see in the diagram, because in real life it's a little bit harder to see the layers. So yeah, if you want to search for that, that's a good thing to do after this video. Okay, so to speed up the process of separating the blood out, the lab people, after the doctor or the nurse has sent off your blood test sample, they'll send it to a lab and it will be put in a centrifuge. A centrifuge is a bit like a really big sort of like a washing machine tumble dryer. It spins around, it separates material. It's not just used for blood, it's used for lots of different chemical processes, but all it does is separate material. So you've got to worry about is a centrifuge separates material. So in your blood it will separate the plasma, the white blood cells and the platelets and the red blood cells. That's all we need to concentrate on today, but you may see the word centrifuge other places in science. It spins the blood around basically in a test tube. So eventually the blood will separate into 3 layers. So the plasma, 55% of the blood. So most of your blood's actually made up of plasma. Okay, it's not actually red, most of it. So it might be quite surprising. The red blood cells still make up quite a big portion, 45% of the blood. And then a small fraction, less than 1%, okay, less than 1%, that means, of the blood is white blood cells and the platelets. Okay, so you need to know approximately those numbers, okay, for questions. So we'll go on to the first part then, in focus, the plasma. So this is actually, sometimes people need to have blood plasma given to them when they have certain illnesses. So sometimes this is actually a bag of plasma. Yeah, it's kind of a yellowy colour. Okay, yeah, it doesn't look like blood at all, really. So blood plasma, yeah, yellow liquid that carries, sometimes it's kind of like a straw colour, they call it, sort of a very light yellow colour, with like vegetable oil colour when you see it in real life. It carries all blood cells. Okay, so it contains most of the water to carry the other blood cells. Also, this is an important thing to know, is it transports other substances which are dissolved in the blood, such as the waste carbon dioxide. So remember, we breathe out carbon dioxide. It is a waste product for us. Okay, so humans and other animals, carbon dioxide is a waste product. So that's a very important one to remember. Urea formed as a waste product again from the liver. So when your liver breaks down your food and other substances, urea is the waste product. Okay. And soluble products from digestion. So after digestion, soluble products like the glucose, sort of other amino acids that you'll look at in digestive videos, they are carried in the plasma of the blood. Okay, so you've forgotten about some of those, you can look at some other videos on digestion. But we'll focus today just on the blood. Okay, also, probably the most important, in a way, part of the blood is the red blood cells. I mean, they do make it red after all. Okay, and they have one job, so their only job really is to transport oxygen around the body. That's why it's in bold. It is their big important job. They are probably one of the most important things in the whole human body. Okay, the red blood cell, and this will be in tests and exams until GCSE and beyond as well. So it's important to know this. It's not difficult either. So a special feature, so you'll be asked about specialized cells, and the red blood cell is a good one to talk about because it's nice and simple and straightforward. Okay, it's a specialized cell. From cells is a specialized cell. So a biconcave shape. Okay, yeah, it's a disc with the center pushed in slightly. Okay, so I always imagine one of those red Baby Bell cheeses, those red ones with the wax. If you got between your thumb and a forefinger and squash the middle of it, that's kind of what a red blood cell looks like. I always do that in class. I always get the red Baby Bell cheese and squash the middle. Biconcave means, yeah, it's squashed on both sides. Bi meaning two, like bicycle. Biconcave, squashed on both sides. Okay, and this is important because it gives them increased surface area for diffusion. Okay, so it's the next bit. They contain a red pigment called hemoglobin. Okay, you may have heard that before. It's a very important word, hemoglobin. So this is actually what makes the blood red, is hemoglobin. Okay, this binds to oxygen, so it sticks to it, means binding, stick to it, to oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. That's not difficult, is it? Because oxygen and hemoglobin combined in one word. It's not a new word, it's just two words, oxygen and hemoglobin. The word heme here actually comes from Latin for iron. It's in like the metal, because it's got iron in it. That's why people say that iron is important in food, things like spinach and some meats, to take in to have healthy blood cells. Okay, so also they have no nucleus. This is important too. You'll be asked about this. The red blood cell is specialized in another way. It does not have a nucleus. So it frees up space for the oxyhemoglobin. So it all kind of sticks on here instead of having a nucleus, because they don't need a nucleus to tell them what to do. They kind of float along and they stick to oxygen with the oxyhemoglobin. So obviously oxygen is taken in by the lungs. Remember, there was a revision for the lungs in the alveolus. Okay, so that's the singular of alveoli. Okay. Oxygen binds with the red blood cell oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so it's sort of like the pigment, and it carries it to body organs and muscles. If you don't have oxygen to your body organs, like your heart, obviously, it's obviously yeah, it's kind of the end, isn't it? Really. So this is a very, very important process. Okay, if your cells don't have oxygen, you're not living anymore. Okay, so it's important to remember all this. It's an important job that these have. Okay, the white blood cells. Okay, so actually in recent times we've been talking about immunity, so that's a good thing actually. People have been learning about this a bit more. Okay, so it'll help you learning about this. I think these are really, really interesting. So if you want to go and find out some more about these, okay, about the white blood cells, there's lots of things associated with them, but at the moment we're just going to talk about two types. So the lymphocytes, okay, so they make antibodies, and they warn the body that a foreign cell is present. So if you got a bacterial infection, the bacteria invading your body, or fungal infection or virus, and the white blood cells make antibodies, okay, which actually bind to what's invading you. Okay, so, and that warns other cells that that's not part of your body. It's a very clever process about what's happening. Okay, antibodies. So when you have vaccinations, you have a dead form of a microorganism, like a virus or a bacteria, and the body gets used to making antibodies. Okay, so, and also some lymphocytes also form antitoxins to poison, so against the poison made by some microbes. So some microorganisms, especially like bacteria, they make toxins, which obviously will damage your body. So the white blood cells actually combat this by making antitoxins. Okay, there's extremely interesting things in white blood cells. And then you have the other ones I used to like to draw in class when I was at school, the phagocytes. Okay, phagocytes, depending on how to pronounce that, so engulf and digest invading microbes. So they actually, it's quite simple. You have the pathogen. So a pathogen is another word for invading microorganism. It can mean a bacteria, a fungus, or a virus, a pathogen. Okay, that's just a word for all of them. Anything that's going to harm our body. Okay, and they just engulf them and digest them. It's quite straightforward and quite funny how they work. Okay, in focus, platelets. Okay, the platelets are obviously very important too. Okay, so they are small fragments, they're pieces of cells, then they have no nucleus. So in a little bit of commonality to red blood cell, but a lot smaller. So this diagram shows the platelets are like parts of the cell, they're not a whole cell like the red blood cell. Okay, so they help the blood to clot. Okay, again, if blood doesn't clot, you can be in serious trouble. Okay, so they help the blood to clot as follows. So enzymes convert fibrinogen into fibrin. Okay, this produces a network of protein fibers, as you can see here, which capture the red blood cells. Okay, so this clots the blood, and you may see it on the surface of your skin as a scab. Okay, so it clots the blood, stops you losing blood. Okay, so what I would do is that I would, if I okay, obviously if I was you and learning this the first time, is to draw out a diagram like this. Okay, or a table. There's lots of students find it useful to draw a table so they can look up what they have learned. Okay, so if you want to pause the video, of course it's recorded, so you can pause it any time and copy this down and then use the previous slides, again, because you can rewind, it's a video, to write this down. Okay, so I watch lots of videos learning things online and I pause all the time. So don't worry if you pause all the time. That's the point of a recorded video, is that people can, in their own time, they can actually obviously write as much as or whenever they want or how fast. So don't worry about it. So we're going to go through some questions. Okay, so in this one, so this is another thing. So identify the major parts of blood. So again, I would encourage you to draw this. Colouring pencils if you've got them, okay, or make it clear which is parts of different parts, and go back to the first slide and fill this in, okay, because obviously that is important to remember the different parts of the blood. So again, you can pause the video, okay, draw it, and then go back to the original slide where this is featured. So it's featured on, I'll go back, it's featured here. Okay, so to fill that in. So the next question is going to look at, here's the answers as well. I put the answers in for you. Question check. Okay, so we're going to show you the answers and go through them in a moment, but what I would do is I would write these out, okay, and then try to answer the questions before looking at the answers using the slides before as a comprehension check, to check with yourself that you've taken the information in. I've seen lots of videos on other course websites where they do this. They stop the video and they ask you a question. I think that's a good idea because it makes you stop and think for a minute and to write down the question before they carry on with the answer. And I think that's a good idea. So asking yourself what you have learned so far. So just I'll pause the video here, and you can write these down. Again, it's a video you can pause at any time. Okay, so we'll go through the answers. Okay, so which three substances does plasma transport in the body? So you should have written waste carbon dioxide, urea from the liver, and the soluble products of digestion. Number 2, so I've got a new word here. What organelle, so that means part of a cell, are red blood cells missing? So they're missing a nucleus. Number 3, what is the pigment called that makes red blood cells red? Hemoglobin. So that's the actual pigment is hemoglobin. Remember, when it binds to oxygen, it sticks to oxygen, it's oxyhemoglobin. Number 4, what shape are red blood cells? And how does this help them with their function, so their job? Biconcave, so they have more space to carry oxygen as oxyhemoglobin. Be careful to carry oxygen as oxyhemoglobin. 5, what are the 2 types of white blood cell and what do they do? So lymphocytes and phagocytes. Lymphocytes form antibodies and some form antitoxins. Phagocytes engulf and ingest pathogens. Okay, quite straightforward there. Describe what platelets are in one sentence. Fragments of cells that have no nucleus. And number 7, what characteristic do platelets share with red blood cells? No nucleus. Okay. What does a blood clot harden into on the surface of the skin? So it hardens into a scab. Okay, thank you for listening, joining the video today. So I hope you done well with those questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.